Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll be talking about Palestine in Islamic ages. I'm going to focus on Quds, Jerusalem, as the main city location where all historical events revolve around. So we're talking about when Umar entered Jerusalem. So Umar is the second Khalifa. He entered Jerusalem in 1639. But what happened is in 1638, Muslims laid siege to the city of Jerusalem under the leadership of the companion Sahabi Abu Ubaidah Amir al-Jarrah radiallahu anhu. And he gave the inhabitants of Jerusalem three options. One is to accept Islam. Other option is to surrender and pay a poll tax in exchange for guarantee of protection by Muslims. Because if you're a non-Muslim under the Muslim state, you don't have to fight in their army. So in exchange for protection and exemption from military service, there was a poll tax of some sort. Or war. For 4 months, Jerusalem was under siege until its inhabitants, who were Orthodox, Eastern Christians from the Byzantine Empire, opted for peace. And we would only surrender to Al-Khalifa. So when Umar entered Jerusalem, Sophronius, who was the Jerusalem Orthodox Patriarch, required the arrival of Umar before he hands over the keys city to him. When Umar arrived, as you can see in this fictional picture, he was accompanied by his servant, but he was dressed so simply and humbly that no one believed that he's the Khalifa of the most powerful state that defeated two empires, the Persian and the Byzantine Empire. And it was only upon the arrival of the Patriarch, who kind of verified that it was Umar, he opened the city gates for him and the Muslims entered. When Umar entered Jerusalem, as I said in 1639, he handed the Patriarch a formal written pact that secured the safety of Christian property, individuals, freedom to own, worship, and their safety. So there was no massacres, no looting, no killing. And this pledge was historically known as the Umari Covenant or the Al-Uhd al-Umariyya. And it was not known at that time for the victorious to be so merciful to the people he just defeated. Usually there'd be massacres, people would be killed, the property would be taken, be looting. So Muslims were starting a new era of being humane and just. It was not aimed against the people, it was to spread justice. So the covenant is all in the name of justice from an Islamic concept. They're not aggressors. They want to spread faith, the word of God, and respect to all humanity. Whether you become a Muslim or not, but under the Muslim faith, everyone rights individually to own, to worship, to move are respected as long as they respect the rules of the Islamic Caliphate. So as a sign of respect, when Umar entered Jerusalem, the Patriarch Sophronius accompanied Umar to visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is a very revered and holy site for Christians across the world. And when he entered, it was the time for prayer. And so the Patriarch offered Umar, if he wants, he can pray in the church. So Umar al-Khattab refused, radiallahu anhu, and he said, if I do that, my followers will do the same. And I'm afraid if I do that, Muslims will convert this as time goes by into mosque. So he went outside the Church of Holy Sepulchre and he prayed in an area, and that area became a mosque. And still now it's called Masjid Umar. And that shows you that how much Muslims respect individual rights. Even if you're a Muslim, we will respect your right. If this is a place of worship, it's yours. We have no intention of taking that from you. Although we are more powerful, we can do that. You keep that to yourself. That's your right. We're just here to spread justice. So he went outside and prayed. And after that, he said, show me where is the site of the dome. So the Muslims, we believe Rasul ascended to heaven, to the skies, Isra wal Mi'raj. He traveled at night from Mecca to Jerusalem, and in Jerusalem he ascended to the heavens. And the point where he ascended to heaven is now Dome of the Rock and Masjid al-Aqsa. That site at the time of the Romans were actually a dumpster. It was very dirty. They will just put waste there. So with the Sahabas and the Muslims, they cleaned that site, and he said, this is holy for us, and this is the place where Rasul was Imam for all the prophets, and this is where he ascended to the heavens. After Al-Khulafa al-Rashidin, the Umayyads came, Al-Khilafah al-Umayyad. The Umayyads expanded vast from Spain all the way to China. It was very powerful Muslim caliphate, and under Abdul Malik bin Marwan, he ordered the construction of the Dome of the Rock, the structure that we see here in the screen, which is very famous when we think about Jerusalem, Quds, the golden dome and this six-lane structure. And at the base of it here is when you go inside the mosque, is the dome from which Rasulullah ascended to heaven. So they built the dome on top of the rock. During Umayyad time, Jerusalem became a very important religious site, because when Muslims come for Hajj to Mecca and Medina, that's a one lifetime journey. So it depends which route they come through. They will go to Mecca, Medina, Jerusalem, or the other way around, Jerusalem, Mecca, Medina. So that was standard route. Now, during Abbasid Caliphate, Al-Khilafah al-Abbasiyya, same thing, it just continued to expand and protection for all Muslims. Now, during Abbasid Caliphate, it became weak, and some states kind of rose to power and assumed control over areas under the Abbasid Caliphate. And one of these caliphates were the Fatimid Caliphates. The Fatimid Caliphates belonged to Shia faith, which is contrary to the majority of the Muslim world at the time until our time is Sunni faith. And they were unjust, unorganized, and they assumed power all the way from, Morocco, all the way to North Africa, Egypt, Sudan area now, Hijaz, Mecca, Medina, and the Levant. So Palestine was under their rule, but they still considered the Khalifa in Baghdad as their ruler, but they've controlled vast area. And unfortunately, 1099, the Crusaders came, landed on the shores of Palestine, and there was no resistance. And they surrendered Jerusalem to the Crusaders without a fight. There was a siege, and they didn't fight them, and they just surrendered. And so the Crusaders said, surrender to us, we'll give you safety. What happened, as you see in this painting from the Middle Ages, basically the Crusaders, when they entered Jerusalem, they committed horrendous massacres. They killed everybody, as I said earlier. So they killed every human living creature, animal, women, children, horses. When the Pope ambassador came from Rome to visit Jerusalem, he said there was no place for a footstep without a dead body, and the knees of the horses would be walking in rivers of blood. They also practiced cannibalism. They would cook human meat and they would eat it, especially for kids. It was horrendous. It was one of the gruesome historical crimes in the history of humanity. So fast forward, the Crusaders continued their missions, and one would ask, why would the Crusades came to our area? Like, we had no wars at the time with them in Europe. The Crusades were religious wars by the Christians, kingdoms, and the church in Rome. They said that the Muslims prevented Christian pilgrimage from going to Jerusalem, which was wrong, incorrect, and has never been proven. They wanted to capture the wealth, the riches, and advances of the Muslim nations, and there was many civil wars in Europe. So the Pope in Rome, he wanted to give all these princes and kings in Europe another cause by going to the Holy Land. So as you can see, they came all the way from different parts of Europe, across Turkey, all the way to Palestine. And this is a painting on how when they besieged Jerusalem under the Fatimids, who did not fight them, and they entered Jerusalem and they carried the crosses with them, they committed the massacres. And we just talked about the Crusader brutality and massacres in Jerusalem, which was unseen, unheard of at that time of the history. Ayyubis came and took over the Fatimids, the Fatimiyin, and the Ayyubis were good rulers. So they spread the Muslim Sunni faith again by establishing schools, madrasas. Salah ad-Din built a network of citadels, of castles, to make sure that he spread security, improved the economy and trade, and provided education. Because, at the time, all these areas were under occupation by the Crusaders, torn by wars and poverty. So he had to build the society again. And he was successfully united the Islamic world at the time, powers Egypt and the Levant, which is Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. And after that, he gathered his men and he marched towards Palestine. So the major battle was in Hittin, which is a plain in north of Palestine around the Sea of Galilee, which we call in Arabic Tabariya. So he kind of lured the Crusaders to come out of their strongholds in Safad, north of Palestine. And in July, the hottest time of the year in Palestine, and he kind of lured them into this plain, and there was a fierce battle in a dry area, and he, in a very strategic way, deprived them from water and going back to their fortresses, and they defeated big time. And that was the first and biggest defeat since they came to the Holy Land, to Palestine, in 88 years. They felt that they would never leave, and that's theirs, and they're going to be there forever. And that sent shocks in the whole world. 3 months later, so Hittin was in July 1187, October 87, Salah ad-Din Ayyubi enters Jerusalem. After siege, they surrender, and it was Friday, Rajab 27th, 1528 Hijri, October the 2nd, 1187, the same day of Al-Isra al-Mi'raj. So in the same date where Muslims celebrate Isra al-Mi'raj, the journey of the Prophet ﷺ from Mecca to Jerusalem, and ascending from Jerusalem to the heavens, Salah ad-Din Ayyubi and the Muslims took back Jerusalem after 88 years in the hand of the Crusaders. So what did Salah ad-Din do and his Muslim army when they went into Jerusalem? Did they take revenge? Did they kill everybody? No. Salah ad-Din did what Umar al-Khattab did. He gave them a covenant. He said, your personal belonging, your life, your safety is guaranteed. We're not going to kill you. We're not going to take your money. If you want to stay, you can stay. If you want to leave, you can leave. But we are in charge now. So he entered Jerusalem peacefully. There was no massacres. All inhabitants were granted safety. And it's said that the nobles, the wealthy people of the Crusaders, left early with their money, left their people hungry and poor in Jerusalem, that the Muslims actually gave them charity to sustain their lives. And if they wanted some money to leave to go back to Europe, the Muslims actually secured boats for them to go back to Europe. So they were that humane with them. And then when Salah ad-Din entered Jerusalem, Muslims found that Crusaders used Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock as animal barns. Okay, so they converted the holy sites for Muslims in a place of worship to animal barns. So they entered, they washed the mosque and all the areas, and then they got rose water to wash the walls with it, and they prayed Jum'ah in a very glorious day. And you can see how Muslims treated the occupying glorifying Crusaders when they were victorious in a humane, merciful, justice, Islamic way, versus when the Crusaders occupied, Jerusalem, how they killed everybody, committed massacres, did not respect the holy sites, and convert mosques into barns, while Umar al-Khattab refused to pray in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, just with the fear it may turn into a mosque. So huge and contrasting difference. So the Crusaders did not stop there. They wanted to take back Jerusalem and Palestine. So they sent Richard Lionheart, the King of England, the famous, movie Kingdoms of Heaven. He came back to the coast of Palestine. They had fierce battles. He failed to recapture Jerusalem, and there was a peace deal, and Crusaders never came back Palestine. And he defeated them in the Battle of Haifa, Jaffa, 1192. Now, after Salah ad-Din, there was division and civil wars between his successors, unfortunately. Then Salih Ayyub, one of his successors, fought against the Seventh Crusade on Egypt, and they were successfully able to capture the King of France, Louis IX, and after that, the Crusades stopped. Mamluks followed Ayyubis, and they were their military slaves who assumed power and ruled Egypt and Syria, including Palestine, from 1260 to 1516. They also developed Jerusalem as a center for trade, religious education, and pilgrimage destination. As we said, people will go to Hajj, Mecca and Medina, and stop on Jerusalem depending which route they came from. They also renovated and expanded Al-Aqsa Mosque, and they established and increased the charity services buildings, Al-Waqf, within Jerusalem and Palestine. Fast forward, now we go to Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire ruled from 1299 to 1922 as an extended period, and during that time, as we know, the Turks converted to Islam, and they came from Central Asia, mostly from current Turkmenistan now. They're named after their founder, Uthman, so that's why we call them in Arabic Uthmaniyin, in English Ottomans, and they were pushed out from ancestral lands by the Mongols, and they were nomadic people with very strong ethics and military power, and that reflected on their empire. And the Ottoman protected the whole Muslim Ummah, not just Palestine, so they fought against the Crusades and the pirates in the Mediterranean Sea, the Arabian Indian Sea. They delayed European colonialism of the Muslim Ummah by, keeping them at check for at least 200 years. And they also, fought against the Safavis who wanted to take over the Mecca and Medina. So the Ottomans really protected the Muslim Ummah for the last 400 years. The Ottoman Empire heritage builds on this strong belief in the idea that a strong Muslim nation accepts everybody, is tolerant to all people of faith. So the Ottomans saved the Muslims and Jews and other minorities expelled from Andalus, Islamic Spain, the medieval ages, from the Inquisition courts and all the torture and the killing just based on faith and discrimination. And there were many Jewish communities in North Africa, Middle East, and even in Greece and Turkey. They were the custodians of the holy sites, Quds, Medina, and Mecca. Great contribution to art, science, medicine, architecture. And also they had this concept of citizenship and tolerance. So if you are a citizen of the Ottoman Empire, then you would pay zakah if you're a Muslim. If you're a non-Muslim, you pay your tax. You have freedom of faith, movement, ownership. You do whatever you want. Just respect the law of the land. So the Ottoman Empire had great 400 years. In the late 19th century, the Ottoman Empire started to decline. As you can see from the previous picture, it ruled a vast area: Europe, North Africa, and Middle East, and Hijaz, and part of the Arabic Peninsula. They had great power, but they became weak with external and civil wars. They had poor economy and huge debts. And Europe called them Europe's sick man. The European nations wanted to divide its lands and resources. At that time of weakness, the Zionist movement leader, Theodor Herzl, who was looking for homeland for the Jewish people, met with Sultan Abdul Hamid at the time of dire need for money. The empire was not doing very well. And he said, we can give you money, we can help you with your debt, but we want you to give us Palestine to become a homeland for the Jewish people in a form of bribery. Sultan Abdul Hamid refused, and he said, it's not mine to give, it belongs to all Muslims in the world as a waqf. And by that, I just gave you a quick, focused narration of Jerusalem, Palestine, through the Islamic history from the time of the Khulafa al-Rashidin all the way up to 1922 at the time of the Ottoman Empire. Stay tuned for the Kahoot questions, and tomorrow the story continues. And thank you very much.